Our top focus this hour in a major reversal on the Ukraine war. President Donald Trump has declared that he now believes Ukraine can reclaim all territories lost to Russia. The statement is being seen as a big win for the Ukrainian president, who has time and again minced absolutely no words in stating that Ukraine would not cede territories to Russia. In fact, Zelensky has consistently urged President Donald Trump to stand firm against Putin and keep international pressure on Russia. Taking to a social media platform, Trump said, and I quote, "I think Ukraine, with the support of European Union, is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form. With time, patience and the financial support of Europe and in particular NATO, the original borders from where this war started is very much an option." In fact, in a bilateral meet with Zelensky on the sidelines of the UNGA session, Trump even hailed Ukraine in its war against Russia, telling the Ukrainian counterpart that his nation is putting up one hell of a fight. This in contrast to what the US president's views have been on Russia.
Well, the biggest progress is that the Russian economy is terrible right now. It's, as you know, it's crashing. And that, frankly, Ukraine is doing a very good job of stopping this very large army. You know, Russia doesn't look very distinguished, having taken 3.5 years now, right? It's about 3.5 years of very hard fighting. And it looks like it's not going to end for a long time.
Responding to Trump's statement, the Ukrainian president said that Trump had the influence and power to be a game changer for Ukraine in the war. While Zelensky did not divulge details of his meet with President Trump, he called it constructive meet, adding that Russia's stuttering economy was also discussed in the meet with the US president.
Trump is a game changer by himself if he will be sure in Ukraine, and I think that he is more close now to this situation, and that's why and between us only Trump can. For today, we know some not too much players in the world who can be game changers, but he's the most closer to this.
President Trump's stance represents a dramatic shift from his previous position ahead of talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska. Trump had said that both Ukraine and Russia would have to cede land to each other to end this war. Notably, Trump has come down heavily on his Russian counterpart over the last few weeks. In fact, on the second day of his state visit to the UK, President Trump had said that Russian President Vladimir Putin had let him down over the war in Ukraine.
The U.S. has done 7 of them. The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with President Putin, but he's let me down. He's really let me down. It was going to be Russia and Ukraine, but we'll see how that turns out.
While it is unclear if Trump's words would be matched by a major change in US policy, such as a decision to impose tougher sanctions on Russia, it remains to be seen if Trump's changed goalpost on the Ukraine war could actually change the course of the Russia-Ukraine war. And joining us live on the broadcast from Oslo, Norway is Glenn Diesen. He's a professor of international relations at the University of Southeastern Norway. In fact, he's also the editor at the Russia in Global Affairs journal. Now, President Trump has clearly reversed course on the Ukraine war. The president now says that Ukraine can win back all lost territory from Russia. In your opinion, what explains this shift in position by the US president, given that he had earlier said that there will have to be a land swap deal between the two sides ahead of Alaska talks? Your quick thoughts.
Well, it remains to be seen if there's an actual switch. You just mentioned to see if his words are matched by policy. So last week he recognized that Russia was winning. Now it's Ukraine. As you also said, he said he would end the Gaza war, but he's also calling for the complete ethnic cleansing.
It's not changed, so
you have his state. So it's same with this ending the 7 wars. it doesn't necessarily mean that much. My main takeaway from this was that he made the point that the EU and NATO would have to help Ukraine, and he will sell them weapons. So I got two takeaways. One is that he's prepared to sell weapons to Ukraine that the Europeans can donate to Ukraine, and he also will lift restrictions on how these weapons are used, which means two things. He's continuing to outsource the Ukraine proxy war to the Europeans, and he's also indicating an escalation by removing restrictions. And it's worth keeping in mind that when you address these long-range missiles, they're using American intelligence and targeting. So the Americans will still be deeply involved in the war, but he'll be looking at outsourcing the costs and the responsibility for it to the Europeans.
Right, Mr. Deason, also if you can talk to us about what do you make of Zelensky's statement that has come, who says that Trump could now be a game changer. What are your thoughts on that view, and how do you assess Trump's changing approach towards Russian president compared to his growing alignment with President Zelensky?
Well, it's very different from what we saw in the White House at the Oval Office. But again, I think it's consistent with the new division of labor, that the Europeans should fight the Russians and America can go some and look at the conflicts other places. But if we look at what's being made in terms of commitment to policy, it's really not that much more. So of course, it could be the beginning of a larger shift, but so far these are just words. And again, Trump's words and actions do not always match. But obviously this is a big boost in the morale for Zelensky as well as the Europeans to continue fighting instead of sitting down and talking with Russia. So this will likely contribute to now prolonging the war. It also signal an end to the diplomatic effort. So essentially what was achieved in Alaska, it increasingly appears to be dead and buried.
Also, a quick follow-up question. Do you see a major change in US policy now that Trump has said the remarks that he's of course made on Ukraine having the right to seize all of its territories? Do you see this as he has caveated China and India and EU to sanction first, followed by the US?
Well, I think he would like to see the Europeans put full secondary sanctions, because if the Europeans begin to put sanctions on China, India, and other countries around the world, the Europeans will be even more captured by the US, because they would then limit themselves only to the US market. Now, again, this is a win-win for Trump. He puts then more pressure on Russia. Meanwhile, the Europeans grow increasingly dependent on the United States. So it makes a lot of sense to pursue this path. And indeed, this is kind of the dilemma for the Europeans, because they would like to have a better relationship with the US and restore this transatlantic partnership. But by cutting themselves off from other centers of power, all they're doing is making themselves even more dependent on the United States, which allows the US to extract even more concessions. But again, I think the problem here is it's not that much in terms of the weapons, an issue of political will, but also an ability. It's not really that many more weapons the US have to send. As Biden said at the end of his term as well, they kind of depleted a lot of the weapons they have to send. So it's not as if Trump can suddenly pull all these weapons out of a secret warehouse. So it's essentially what his signal is what he said before. He's willing to sell the weapons so America can make some money of this war. And he's hoping the Europeans will take over. And at the same time, he's giving Zelensky and the Europeans an attaboy. And, you can do this. You can take back all the territories. I think this is, pure delusion. I really doubt that he actually believes this, that they can actually take back the territory. It could also be intended for more pressure, of course, on the Russians, that they should also give up some of the more extravagant demands and, effectively settle for where the conflict line is now. But again, I I wouldn't put too much weight into the actual words he used, but rather the policy which they're indicating.
Yes, remains to be seen the future course of action this war takes. And of course, if any statement, if at all, from the Russian side, appreciate you joining us on the broadcast, Dr. Glenn Diesel.
Thank you.